back to Grand Prix Atlanta. Hello and welcome back to Grand Prix Atlanta. I'm with Ben Seck and this is Jacob Van Lunen. We're about to watch Brad Nelson play against Andy Voss. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Brad is currently top of Swiss, a place he's fairly familiar with.
These names are switched up right now. On the left you have Lawrence, and he is playing Mardu vehicles. He goes by Andy. And on the right you have Brad Nelson there on his Temur energy deck. So here we're getting started with a veteran motorist for Lawrence Vess.
Yeah, a really good start. Obviously, the veteran motorist gives him like scry 2 when he comes into play, and then it makes his vehicle much more effective.
Let's see what Brad has on his turn 2. Nothing.
Yeah.
Hopefully he has some sort of removal spell.
Yeah, you really hope to get to the board, but like if you have an Abrade or a Harness Lightning, that might be good enough too.
Yeah, and it's possible that even though he didn't use a removal spell here when Lawrence attacked here with the veteran motorist, he may still have something and he's looking for a better target.
Yeah. Harvest, a really powerful play from Lawrence here. And I'd be surprised if Brad actually didn't play to the board. He probably would have mulliganed a hand that didn't really have a 1, 2, and 3 play. So I think he'll probably either play. I see a Rogue Refiner in his hand.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and play that Rogue Refiner there.
Yeah.
Get some energy, draw a card.
But Lawrence's attack probably won't stop because the veteran motorist is a good pilot for that Aethersphere Harvester, and we'll give it a +1/+1.
Yeah, taking to the skies is a really powerful strategy against Temur energy.
Yeah, they really only have the Will of Virtuoso to protect a lot of the sky attacks other than Glorybringer, but that's a bit later.
Scrap Heap Scrounger added to the board here for Lawrence. He's going to use that to activate his Aethersphere Harvester and attack with both Veteran Motorist and the Harvester.
Yeah, it's interesting that he actually decided to just attack with the Motorist rather than use it as a pilot, but I think he wants to keep the board fairly clean so he can basically have an advantage over Brad on the board.
Yeah, I don't think he wants a complicated board state against one of the best combat mathematicians around. So
I think Brad's next best play could... Well, he has a Chandra, but a Chandra is not that great because Lawrence will be able to pressure it one way or another. He won't be able to kill a creature such that Brad won't be able to probably lose it in combat. So it'll be interesting. He may just decide to play a Hydra.
And that's exactly what he does. Bristling Hydra comes down there for Brad, pumps him up to 5 energy here, so he's got 1 activation on that Bristling Hydra, which is enough to get through a card like Unlicensed Disintegration.
Right. Lawrence definitely has one in his hand, but he really can't play it into the face of that Hydra. So he may just go to the air, or he may...
And one thing that's nice here for Lawrence, too, is that if he does attack with the 3 power guys and have Brad block and go for an activation of the Bristling Hydra, he gets a really big advantage by using that Unlicensed Disintegration to deal with Hydra and 3 energy.
Yeah, and he's really kind of telegraphing that a little bit. I'm sure Brad understands the potential of an Unlicensed Disintegration, so he probably might just trade this away or not block it at all. He does, next turn, have a Glorybringer in his hand and the mana to cast it. So he's going to evaluate that. I think he wants to keep his Hydra around, so I don't think he's going to risk it, though he is only on 14, so this attack would bring him to 8, and that's pretty low in the face of Disintegration. So Brad actually decides to block. He's going to try and make it hexproof. Lawrence has the Disintegration as he presumed. So he takes 3 from the Disintegration, but the Scrappy Scrounger is blocked. The Aethersphere Harvester still gets for 3. So in both cases, Brad goes down to 8.
Yeah, and with Lawrence having another copy of Unlicensed Disintegration in hand, that really does not work out well for Brad.
Yeah, so I mean, Brad's likely to either play the Virtuoso in his hand and then have a Harness Lightning, or he could actually play his Glorybringer. I think if he's worried about it, Disintegration, I don't think the Glorybringer is right, but if he's wanting to try and have a bigger threat on the board, he may go with that. I think he's better off going with the Will of Virtuoso because it actually gives him multiple blockers and an opportunity to use the removal spell.
Yeah, it looks like he has picked up that Harness Lightning now, so using that in conjunction with Whirler Virtuoso could be a good way to put the shields up.
Yeah. Okay, well, looks like he might be going for Chandra if he goes tapping 4 mana. No, thinking better of it. I think that at 8, it's really precarious, and I think he might want to just play as many... Oh, no, he's deciding to...
So he may use Chandra for mana here.
Yep.
So he's going to Chandra plus...
Oh, this is a
create 2 mana and then cast Whirler Virtuoso. So he has 5 energy now. He has enough to create that Thopter, and he has a Planeswalker on 5. So really putting Lawrence to the test here to decide whether or not he's going to be pressuring Brad's life total or that Planeswalker. But with Brad at 8, could be either way.
Yeah, like he only has enough energy to create 1 Thopter, but if Brad wants the Chandra to survive, he can make that happen because it looks like Lawrence only has 2 attackers right now. Though if he plays another creature, he will have 3 attackers, and then like Brad will basically have to block with his Virtuoso plus another Thopter to make sure that Chandra survives.
So it looks like Lawrence is going to go ahead and use Unlicensed Disintegration to deal with this Whirler Virtuoso. Brad going to respond by making a Thopter.
Yeah, but Lawrence also has a Fatal Push, which actually is really efficient at killing that, and Brad really packs it up because he can't get rid of the creatures on board.
Yeah, at 5, 6 points of power coming into the red zone. That's game 1 here for Andy Vess.
Yeah, I think the Mardu Vehicles deck, if it gets to the board quicker, like Brad missed this 2-drop and didn't really have anything. He only had a Rogue Refiner on turn 3, so not a really effective defense, and just was on the back foot for the entire game.
Yeah, so a lot of you already probably know about Brad Nelson, former Player of the Year, Standard Mastermind. But a little bit about Andy here. Andy is a local from Atlanta. He loves to golf, and he works in finance. So, he said that he wasn't sure if he should say that at the risk of sounding like a stereotype, but you gotta be who you are. It seems his favorite card is Windswept Heath. He loves playing Legacy Maverick.
That's an interesting card to have as your favorite card. If you have a land, it usually has an effect, but this is basically a mana-producing land.
Well, it finds white sources and Dryad Arbor, which you can equip with Jit. So,
does everything.
Yeah, here sneaking over to watch Peter Sochurek play against Shaheen Soorani. Shaheen Soorani down to 1 here with his Grixis control deck in game 1. Will he find a way back into the game?
It's funny. Shaheen had kind of had a little foray into playing non-control decks for a couple tournaments. Did not very well with them. Like he basically did it at the advice of some pro friends he had, and not doing well with either a mid-range deck or a mono-red deck. He said, well, I'm just going to not play the bad decks and actually play control again.
I think it may have been a little bit of a function of him choosing not the best deck when he thought he was choosing the best deck also.
Shaheen cleans the board. So if Peter top decks something with haste, nope. Okay, so Shaheen survives that turn, tapped out. And he does have 3 cards in hand.
Yeah, and after casting Glimmer last turn, he must feel pretty good. So just a Long Tusk Cub here for Petr on the other side of the table.
There's 5 energy, so that Long Tusk Cub can actually get to 4/4, but it looks like Shaheen does not have any removal in his hand, but he does have ways to find more cards. So he could cycle Censor, or he could use Supreme Will to search 4 cards down, or he has a Glimmer of Genius also to also see 4 cards.
So using Supreme Will here, going to look at the top 4 cards of his library.
Yeah, I think he chose that one because it digs the deepest while giving him as much mana as possible.
So he does find Vraska's Contempt here, and he's going to need to use that on the Long Tusk Cub so it doesn't kill him on the following turn. So let's see if he decides to do that main phase or if he decides to wait and gamble with Petr getting a draw step.
So he cast it in his main phase, I think, so he could go up to 3. Now a top-decked Chandra Tortured Defiance won't actually kill him, though it has a problem in of itself.
Yeah, Resolved Planeswalker is quite the problem for Shaheen's deck, as is
Shaheen could pull away pretty quickly if Peter doesn't really have a threat soon, because there's a glimmer coming up definitely in the next turn or two. And this card will definitely pull him ahead.
Yeah, now he gets as many Supreme Wills as he wants, thanks to that Search of Azcanta. And next turn, that's going to flip, turning into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin.
That's really the advantage of some of these control decks. I mean, if they are able to survive the initial onslaught, they can really pull away with their card advantage, Search for Azcanta, Glimmer of Genius. That's really, really what they want to get to. Just clear the board and then have those card drawers.
Yeah, and that's what gives them inevitability in the standard format. Chandra, a turn too late here for Petr. Shaheen going to cast Glimmer of Genius. Gets to look quite a few cards deep to see if he can find some sort of answer.
So
nothing in the top two cards.
Yeah,
a Harness, Lightning, and a land.
I think he has to bottom these.
Yeah, but we know that he already put a Disallow on the bottom of his library here. I'm not quite sure if he had put another one on the bottom at some other point also. So looking for Contempt or Counter Magic.
But he draws 2 lands, so he's going to likely go to 1 life after Chandra probably pluses revealing a card, which means that Shaheen's going to have to really answer that Chandra this turn. Otherwise, Chandra will actually activate and do the final points of damage.
So he did find Hour of Devastation, which will kill this Chandra.
Just.
Yes. But still down to 1 here. Surviving by the skin of his teeth. Indiana Jones in the back of the train, reaching back for his hat.
Oh. It's actually, when I play these control decks, I kind of love living on the edge a little bit. It's just a really, really kind of... It's definitely a rush. Okay. Uses his Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. Doesn't find anything.
A whiff.
Pretty rare in this deck to actually whiff. Most of the deck has non-land spells. Non-land and creature spells. Okay.
All right, another Glimmer of Genius for Shaheen. It seems like our main match is going again, so let's jump back over there, and we'll come back here after that finishes. All right, here we are in Game 2. Andy Vess up 1 game here against Brad Nelson.
A much better start by Brad, having a long toss card on turn 2. Lawrence not actually having an artifact for his Toolcraft Exemplar, so just completely brick walled by that long toss cub.
Yeah, so long toss cub here, followed by Rogue Refiner for Brad Nelson, up to 2 energy, about to go into combat.
The combination of getting to the board early and going first, meaning that this game's already much, much better for Brad.
Yeah, so going to make that long test cub a little bit bigger. Now it's a 3/3. Generate another 2 energy to replace the last 2.
Lawrence looks like he's having some mana problems because 1, he's got 2 hubs and he's already used 1 energy, and 2, he did not play a 3rd land.
Yeah, this one looks like it's just running away for Brad.
Yeah, so Brad gets to 4.
Just long test cub and Rogue Refiner getting into the red zone here.
Yep. Lawrence basically chumping with the long toss cub.
All right, so this one looks like it's a blowout. Let's jump back over and see how Shaheen is doing in his match there against Temur Energy. And yes, Brad Nelson easily taking the second game, forcing a 3rd one. Still at 1 here. It looks like Bristling Hydra may resolve.
So the Bristling Hydra, he has enough energy. I'm not sure if he's done the trigger for this turn. I presume he probably... Oh, yeah, I think it's Shaheen's turn, so...
Oh, is it?
I don't know, actually. I'm just trying to figure out where in the turn cycle we are. Shaheen does have a Harness Lightning and a Arrow of Devastation, so probably can deal with the Hydra if he wants to.
All right, so Torrential Gearhole coming down here for Shaheen.
It's a good blocker for the Hydra right now because Hydra only has 5 energy, so only can use his ability once, getting to a 5/4, which is a little too small for the 5/6 Torrential Gearhulk.
So Glimmer of Genius here now for Shaheen. Cast for free thanks to Torrential Gearhulk, leaving one card on top. And that would be a Disallow.
He's got to feel pretty good here with a Disallow in his hand. I suspect that Shaheen's actually the favorite right now. It's very strange to say with Petr being on 20 and Shaheen being on 1, but with Azcanta as well as a grip full of removal encounters, I actually think that Shaheen is in good stead to actually completely turn the corner here.
Yeah, so that Bristling Hydra was on the stack there. So Shaheen, despite having the Disallow in hand and the mana to cast it, chooses to allow that Bristling Hydra to resolve, thinking to himself, well, there's no way it even matters now that I have this Torrential Gearhulk and I have this steady stream of cards thanks to Azcanta the Sunken Ruin.
Yeah, no, he knew he had the Hour of Devastation and that the Torrential Gearhulk will actually survive it. But the Bristling Hydra does not quite have enough energy to get bigger. It's possible that he might have something like Harness Lightning that actually might produce some extra energy so to survive it.
Yeah, see here, if Petr uses Harness Lightning and chooses not to deal damage with the Harness Lightning, he can generate 3 energy, which would allow him to put 3 activations onto the Bristling Hydra, thus allowing it to survive this Hour of Devastation.
It's very possible if he does choose to do that, though. Well, he doesn't. He actually has the Harness Lightning in his hand, but he chooses not to do it. Maybe saving it for actually killing the Gearhulk itself. That's what he does. It looks like Shaheen might try and end this game pretty quickly by playing the Scarab God from his hand. Or maybe he wants to keep up the mana.
Yeah, the one danger of playing a card like Scarab God here is that you know that you simply lose to Petr resolving either Glorybringer and or Chandra,
right.
Torch of Defiance. Of course, it's unclear whether or not Petr would even be playing Glorybringer, seeing the swamp in his deck there.
Yeah, for sure.
That seems unlikely.
So, Shaheen sculpting his hand, using Azcanta, cycling Sensor. Yeah, this one looks very close to over. This, like, if this Scarab God is uncontested, it's going to be very, very quick because Shaheen has so much mana available to him. So he doesn't really need to, do much. He can actually return Gearhulk, which actually can counter anything. World of Virtuoso, I'm pretty sure that Shaheen will not let that happen because it will represent 4 Thopters and he's at 1.
Yeah, he has plenty of counter magic here.
Ooh, he actually let it resolve and kill it. So that's interesting because, it is true that Petr can only make 3 because the energy trigger for World of Virtuoso hasn't resolved yet. So he must have a way of actually dealing with all those 1/1s.
It would stand to reason. He could also use Scarab God now to return the World of Virtuoso to play, and he has access to 13 energy, which is more than enough to block these Thopters forever.
It's actually really interesting. Shaheen, very, very experienced control player. He knows his counters are actually at a premium. So instead of using a counterspell on that World of Virtuoso, he's using Harness Lightning, which has a little bit less flexibility available to him. So, he knows he needs to be very, very careful about saving his counter for something that can't be killed with a Harness Lightning.
So now he's looking through, seeing what he's going to find with that Scarab God. Chooses Rogue Refiner, gives him 2 extra energy and draws him a card, so allows him to produce additional Thopters here.
Oh, Shaheen really just going for as much value as possible.
And now scrying and creating some damage here with Scarab God.
Yep. So he's going to respond to the Scry trigger from Scarab God.
It looks like he's going to get back a Glorybringer here.
Yeah, I wonder if he's actually going to try and go for the 1-turn kill, but it may not be necessary. Oh, getting the Hydra. So what I think Shaheen is doing is just trying to get as many Thopters as possible, because he knows the more Thopters he has, the less chance that Peter is able to break through with a creature unexpectedly.
Yeah, and with all this counter magic in hand too, now he is relatively safe from just about everything that Petr could do. The only card that Petr has now in his deck that could cause any sort of problem would be Chandra. So on our main match there, Brad Nelson drew a lot of lands and lost a very quick game 3.
So Brad drops to 12-2, but still is in good contention.
Yeah. So Petr seeing no way out. Shaheen, despite being at 1 for the entirety of the time we were watching that game, manages to pull it out after putting himself in a wildly advantageous situation.
Yeah, I mean, playing control deck, I think it's really, really tempting to actually, just counter everything. Shaheen really is a very expert control player. Really kind of measures his answers and his threats. Make sure that he doesn't tap low too often. Uses his entire life total as a resource. I mean, Jake, do you play a lot of control?
I have in the past. I haven't in recent years.
What do you prefer playing? Beatdown, control?
I like mid-range decks. I've always liked mid-range decks. I like interactive mid-range decks. So something else that happened here, though. Andy the golfer, X1, locking up his seed for top 8 here at Grand Prix Atlanta with Mardu vehicles.
Wow.
So we have our first for sure top 8 of Grand Prix Atlanta, and it is not an energy deck.
Mardu vehicles, just if it gets the jump on the energy deck, or if the energy deck either has problems with its mana, either flooding or not having enough, it will actually kind of really, really not give you a lot of room to maneuver.
Looking at both players as they're sideboarding here, it looks like Petr has access to a lot of planeswalking in his sideboard there. I see Nicole Bloss, God Pharaoh. I also see a few different copies of Nissa. So, I mean, those could cause a serious problem for somebody like Shaheen Soorani, who's playing a control deck without any sort of way to really pressure opposing planeswalkers. Petr also looks like he's sideboarding in Sky Sovereign, console flagship. It may seem odd to sideboard that in against somebody who doesn't really have planeswalkers or creatures that you want to be dealing 3 damage to. But what's really nice about a card like that is that when Shaheen uses a card like Hour of Devastation to completely clean up the board, that 6/5 flyer is going to remain on the battlefield, and every single threat that Petr sticks is going to be essentially a game-winning threat that has haste and 6 power and comes crashing into the red zone.
So one of the important cards that Petr actually put in was Nissa, Steward of Elements. That card is actually really, really important to put into your deck on the play, specifically because it's one of the rare. It's one of the rare planeswalkers that has. It only costs 3 mana to play, and actually she could be played for as much mana as you want, but she can be played for 1 and then immediately go up to 3. And if Shaheen does not have a way of actually getting rid of Nissa immediately, it gets big very, very quickly and really kind of makes Petr's draws really good and gets him some card advantage.
Yeah, it's just an excellent card in these sort of control matchups. So what is it that you think Shaheen could be doing post-board to set himself up better to deal with opposing planeswalkers?
Yeah, it's funny because I think the control deck, even though Energy has a lot of creatures, needs to actually bring in some amount of counter magic, because it's fairly well known that the Energy decks actually go to a much more resilient planeswalker strategy, and so Shaheen should probably bring in some of his negates and not take out too many cards that remove creatures too. So he just has to kind of have a little bit of everything, because what the Energy deck does is it tries to diversify its threats, and so Shaheen really has to make sure that he has answer for everything, and that's why actually it's the power of the Energy deck. It doesn't actually have a particular card type, doesn't have a particular strategy. It can actually go fast, it can go slow, it can have permanents on the table, it can play from the hand.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something that's nice about Shaheen's deck is that Hour of Devastation deals with both the planeswalking and the creature side of deck like 4-color Energy here. So Shaheen going to keep 7 cards. Petr going down to 6 here, the second game.
Yeah, Shaheen's going to be a little bit on the back foot for this game, just because control decks really try and use their mana, and because Petr will always have one more mana than Shaheen, or at least can play an extra land, he can play bigger threats into Shaheen's less mana.
Yeah, he's asking the big questions when Shaheen, still just has the little answers.
Right. and then yes, some of the threats are like Long Tusk Cub too, which is 2 mana. Shaheen, if he doesn't have a 2 mana answer or a counter spell in hand, can actually get out of hand really, really quickly.
So something else that's interesting here is, mulliganing in the past has, often been hugely disadvantageous, and that's still true now. But in the current standard format, a lot of the time, people win and lose games while still having cards in their hand, and that's made mulliganing, less of an issue. But when you're playing against a control deck like here, do you think about that more?
Yeah, you have much more time, so you should actually be a little bit more aggressive to make sure that you have a chance to kind of get under their control cards or counter magic. Owen Turtenwald, one of the best players in the world, basically said mulligan to 6 is almost the same as 7 now, so you should really, really be very, very liberal with your mulligans, especially on the play.
Yeah, I mean, going 2-3 with your cards seems much more important than having an extra one down the line on turn 8 or 9.
And you really should look at your hand and say, how many effective cards do I actually have in my hand? Because if you have a 7-drop in your opening hand, that card is basically a mulligan until you get to that point, and the game may not even get to that point.
So Petr leads things off with Servant of the Conduit. Shaheen, his second land comes into play tap, so it looks like he probably won't be interacting much on this turn either.
Yeah, this is actually really, really good for Petr. If he actually has another land and one of the 4-costing threats, Shaheen basically can't counter it, and so really would have, if it was a Hydra on the next turn. It doesn't look like he has the land, but if it was a Hydra, he would have extra energy to protect it, and Shaheen doesn't have that many answers to a unanswered Hydra.
Yeah, let's see what Petr chooses to do. It looks like he doesn't have a third land here. He does have that mana from Servant of the Conduit, but that's going to use up valuable energy. Ooh, wow, Deathgorge Scavenger coming in here. And Deathgorge Scavenger, it exiles cards from graveyards when it comes into play and or attacks. If it exiles a creature card, you gain 2 life, and if it exiles a spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn.
Yeah, it's actually a really, really interesting card because it's good against the control deck because it can basically remove instants from the graveyard that he could return with Torrential Gearhawk, and also it can remove creatures that it would be returned with Scarab God. So it really plays both sides.
Yeah, in addition to that, it also slows down the flipping of Azcanta, which is quite valuable in this matchup.
If Shaheen put Azcanta in the graveyard, it'd take a long time for him to actually flip that card.
Yeah, so there, Servant of the Conduit getting killed by Shaheen Soorani's Harness Lightning. Shaheen recognizing that Petr missed a land drop and trying to take advantage of his misfortune here by choking him on mana, and it seems to be working. Petr unable to find a third land there. He does have a lot of 2-drops, which is good for him, but he will not be double spelling anytime soon, and it seems unlikely that he'll be able to play out his cards at the rate that he's drawing them.
Old school players will understand the concept of bolting the bird, and I think Shaheen probably has been playing long enough that he feels that he should actually attack the mana creatures of Petr.
So here, if that was Shaheen's plan, it seems that he has gotten himself into a situation where he doesn't have another spot removal spell because he does not kill the Servant of the Conduit on his turn here.
That Deathgorge Scavenger can hit really hard. I mean, when it actually removes a spell from the graveyard or a non-creature from the graveyard, it actually gets +1/+1. So it hits for 4. And a 3-costing creature that hits for 4 is really, really... It only takes 5 turns for you to win.
It's a fast clock.
Okay, hits for another 4.
Petr finding another land here in Aether Hub.
And he's got plenty of energy to use, so this Long Tusk Cub is actually a pretty big threat.
And so Shaheen attempting to disallow that long tusk cub. Petr says no way and negates it by tapping that Servant of the Conduit in the Ether Hub.
Now, Shaheen actually very much on the back foot. He doesn't look like he has a Hour of Devastation in his hand, and Petr has 3 creatures, 2 of which are very, very good threats.
And something that's especially dangerous is that if Petr is able to generate an additional 4 energy on his following turn, which seems quite easy, especially with Long Tusk Cub perhaps generating 2 on its own, then his Long Tusk Cub could actually get out of range of that Hour of Devastation, even if Shaheen was able to draw it.
Yeah, I mean, also if Petr basically, makes an aggressive attack next turn, he actually hits for 10. He could actually pump the Long Tusk Cub up twice, use the Death God Scavenger's ability to probably remove the Disallow, and so it'd be 2 full power creatures, and if you want to attack with a Servant, that put it to 2, which means that a pinpoint removal spell is not going to be good enough.
So Shaheen Surrani casting Glimmer of Genius here. What card do you think Shaheen Surrani is looking for at this point of the game?
Hour of Devastation or nothing. And I think that might not even be enough right at this point. Petr's open to making a very, very aggressive attack right now.
So he finds that second red in case he does draw that Hour of Devastation.
Now, whether he actually uses all the energy to for the Long Tusk Cub really depends on what threats he can have in play for the next turn. I think he's worried about a Hour of Devastation, so he's going to attack in such a way to try and avoid getting completely swept by that card.
So 4 mana here. Bristling Hydra comes down for Petr.
Okay. Just want to get... So he's using all the energy into the Long Tusk Cub.
And what's nice about this now for Petr is that even if Shaheen is able to find that Hour of Devastation...
Yeah, he'll get 2 energy from the Cub, bringing the Cub to 6/6, which is definitely out of range of the 5 damage of the Hour of Devastation.
So there, Petr able to run over a Shaheen Soorani on the draw.
Yeah, it really shows how kind of helpless sometimes the control deck can be on the draw, because the energy deck has multiple 2-costing threats that really have to be answered immediately. And Shaheen had 1 spot removal spell, a lot of card drawing spells, a few counter spells, and so just really, really couldn't claw back the game.
And Shaheen Soorani, a control master, if you will. You were talking about it earlier. He plays control decks at basically every event, and recently he went on a bit of a hiatus. He started playing other decks. Some pros reached out to him and they were like, hey, you always play these weird control decks and we think it's hurting your win percentage. Maybe you should try something else. And he did try something else for about a year, and it wasn't working out too well for him, so he is now back on the control train.
Yeah, I think some players actually just have natural skills and advantages in certain archetypes. Shaheen, definitely a control player. We know some beatdown and mid-range players that really are defined by those archetypes. And so it may, even though another deck may be actually better from a parallel level, you may actually be more comfortable playing something closer to your style. Some players can play all types of decks. Some players cannot.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is important is that even if you are a specialist who plays one type of deck, I think it's important to sit down and try your hand at the other popular decks in the format for at least a few matches against a few different types of opponents, because it really gives you a feel about what's important for your opponent's game plan. And I think that people who only play with one type of deck often don't understand what it is that's most important to their opponent in a particular matchup, and that can be a pretty big disadvantage, which is why a lot of the time you'll see the absolute best players in the world playing just a huge bevy of different archetypes over the course of even a small period of time.
Yeah, and it's obviously in your best interest to try and learn other archetypes, because there could be a format or a metagame that doesn't allow you to play your favorite archetype. So there's not really many combo decks in Standard right now, and so if you were a combo player, it would be actually really, really hard to push that skill into the format.
Yeah, and I think that playing a good amount of combo, especially in older formats, does teach you how to get things done on a particular turn. And I think that that's a really valuable skill that's often overlooked, is one's ability to resolve what matters on a specific turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things for Shaheen, he actually probably had a embarrassment of riches of different like control decks he could be playing. There's a blue-black deck that's really much more streamlined than what Shaheen is playing. He could play Grixis, which is what he chose to play. But there's also all the approach decks that have a lot of control elements and kind of a combo kill. I mean, it's not really a true combo, but it allows you to win games very fast. A control deck generally has a little bit of problem actually like ending the games pretty quickly.
Yeah, it essentially is just, the 2 dragons used to put in your deck to eventually win the game. The wisp, if you will. But what's nice about approach is that some people just play 4 copies so they can just back-to-back the approaches and win the game outright. But somebody like Guillaume Matignon, he chooses to only play, 2 approaches in his deck?
Right.
And just wants to play a much more pure control game. And he just chose that as his eventual win condition.
So Shaheen happy to be on the play. It was really, really important that he won game 1.
Storm of the Conduit for Petr.
So,
And that's going to meet a braid.
yeah, Shaheen definitely not wanting Peter to actually have a mana advantage on him, or parity. Shaheen getting to the crucial 3 mana because a bunch of his counter spells, the Disallow and the Supreme Will at 3 mana.
Petr attempting another Servant of the Conduit here.
I think this one's going to get countered, but he's got about 3 different counter spells that could counter it. Chooses to use Essence Scatter. Ooh.
Ooh, missing a 4th land drop for Shaheen. That's not a great sign for him. Though it does look like he has a few ways to dig on Petr's end step if he needs to do so.
Yeah, no, I mean, Shaheen really does not want to miss a land before turn 5 or so. Now, really using a valuable resource in Supreme Will to counter that Servant.
And now Long Tusk Cub is able to stick here for Petr thanks to Shaheen missing that land drop and not having access to enough lands.
And he has a Vraska's Contempt in his hand, but only 1 black mana, and the only one he has is come to play tapped. So the Long Tusk Cub could get really big and do a lot of damage before Shaheen is able to answer it.
And with Chandra Torture Defiance seeming to loom in Petr's hand, it seems as if it's going to be, target city for that Vraska's Contempt, and the Long Tusk Cub could be getting out of hand, the Planeswalker could be getting out of hand. It's just a nightmare.
I think Petr is a little wary of the Censor that could be in Shaheen's hand. I mean, Shaheen does have it in his hand, but it's possible that he might think that he doesn't have it because he was a little bit mana light, and so he may have thought he might have cycled it on turn 4.
So Shaheen chose not to cycle his Censor on a few different turns there. What do you think about that? Okay, well, here, a Rogue Refiner getting countered by Supreme Will, but what do you think about his choice not to counter Censor to find 4th land?
Yeah, I think it's kind of depends on the rest of your hand. The reason you might not cycle it is that you have a 3 mana counter, which he did have, and so if he didn't hit a land, he was not able to counter anything and basically be defenseless from whatever threat Petr might play the next turn. And I think that's basically what happened for him. He knew that if he cycled it, he could get a land and play it, but he didn't have any 2 mana counter spells, so he valued having a solid counter spell over actually trying to get a land.
Sir Petr definitely attacking with this Long Tusk Cub, has to decide if he wants to produce some amount of energy prior to combat. He's going to do so.
Petr's just trying to put out his worst threats, as in the less threatening cards against Shaheen. A very, very good tactic with control decks, because they're basically trying to figure out how many smaller threats they can deal with before they actually, might accidentally let through something like a Chandra or a Glorybringer or something like that.
So here again, Petr now has this Long Tusk Cub up to a 5/5 and has more than 2 energy in the reserve, so he is able to get out of the range of Hour of Devastation.
Yeah, Shaheen's still having a lot of problems with his mana. I mean, he has a Vraska's Contempt. that could deal with that long toss cub, but does not have the second black. And now the long toss cub is out of range of the arrow devastation. So really, Shaheen has to hit a black source in the next turn or two, maybe even just one turn. Otherwise, he's going to succumb to the cub.
Petr smells blood.
Shaheen won the first game, at 1 life, so maybe he just wants to challenge himself again.
Yeah, wants to see if he can get back into it. Chad actually corrected us earlier. He was not at 1 life for the entirety of the time we were watching the match. At one point, he jumped up to 3 with a Vraska's Contempt, but was ticked back down to 1 with an opposing Chandra.
Fair enough. I stand corrected. In any case, Shaheen really, really living on a razor's edge here.
So another attack here from Petr, getting in for 9 now, I believe.
Yeah, this is really dangerous because if he doesn't hit an untapped black source this next turn, he'll probably die to the cub, because even if he kills the cub, he'll still be dealing with the Rogue Refiner. And there's not a single card that actually allows him to deal with 2 threats. He lets the Chandra through.
Wow, so
probably does not have a counter spell.
Shaheen now down to 1.
Yep, Shaheen just 2 Vraska's Contempts in his hand, no second black. Petr basically had too many threats, and it really shows kind of one of the weaknesses of the control decks versus the energy decks. The control deck actually, had to kill a lot of, things like Servant of the Conduit, or doesn't know if they were important to Petr.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to decide which questions you want to use your answers on, and as a result, you need to line up your answers properly so that they can correctly answer those questions. And when you don't have, a wealth of card advantage, that can be really difficult to do.
Yeah, and also one of the dangers of playing Grixis specifically, a lot of the good Grixis cards are double color. So you have things like the Disallows, then you have Hour of Devastation, and then you have Vraska's Contempt. So when you have 3 different cards that require two colors of mana, it's really tough.
Here we are, jumping over to another match. This is Sergio Garcia playing against Justin Rios. It's a 4-color energy mirror. Looks like Sergio has a Servant of the Conduit, a Rogue Refiner in play, and he's adding a Glint Sleeve Siphoner to the board. Justin on the other side, just a Rogue Refiner. Yeah,
so it looks like Sergio's playing the black-heavy version of 4-color energy. So what that generally does is it only plays red for Whirl of Virtuoso.
And Harness Lightning usually, right?
Yeah, so sometimes Harness Lightning. I've seen versions that don't. But then the removal spells they use are Fatal Push and Vraska's Contempt. So they have slightly better removal spells. I mean, Harness Lightning is very, very good and efficient, but the other cards are they kill things much, much more efficiently in such that, by Planeswalker comes down, Contempt basically deals with it.
Yeah, and Contempt happens to be very good against the cards you're worried about when you're playing deck like Energy. Cards like Hazaret the Fervent, cards like the Scarab God. Those cards are very hard to answer with traditional removal, and Vraska's Contempt does a good job of trumping them. Here comes Gonti, a Lord of Luxury. A luxurious 4 cards to look through here for Justin Rios.
If I could play every game of Standard with Gonti, I would be a happy man. This card is it's pure card advantage. You, 1, get a card from your opponent's deck. Also, it allows you to play something you normally couldn't play in your deck. And when it blocks, it's going to kill pretty much any creature.
The best is when you know your opponent has scryed something important to the top, and you Gonti them. Oh, it's so luxurious.
And I like the flavor.
As do I.
It looks pretty close right now. I would probably say Sergio has slight advantage, even though that...
Whoa. 6 mana here with Sergio, and this means something very specific, and I imagine it rhymes with Casca. Yep. Yes, it's Vraska.
From Nebraska.
Yes. Vraska is used to activate and kill that Rogue Refiner on the other side of the table.
Yeah, actually really, really good, because now it can't block the Glint Sleeve Siphoner. Justin doesn't actually have 3 power to pressure Vraska, so that's actually really, really important. Hopefully, for Justin's sake, he actually has an answer straight for Vraska. I think he has a Contempt in his hand, so he probably needs to kill that Vraska, otherwise she will get out of control very quickly.
And it's hard, though, because if he uses that contempt, that's, a pretty big portion of his turn being used to do that when he's already falling behind on board, and Sergio has that Glint Sleeve Siphoner that's going to generate additional card advantage. So, taking a look at the luxury card.
How luxurious is it? It's a black card, but I didn't quite see what it was.
Is it another Gonti?
Ooh, Gonti into Gonti? That's so luxurious.
There's so much luxury happening. The one unfortunate part about Gontiing into Gonti is that you can't cast the second Gonti. Well, you can, but you usually want to wait.
One of the advantages Gonti has over something like Hostage Taker is you don't have. If Gonti dies, you're still able to cast the spell after. Whereas Hostage Taker, if the Hostage Taker dies, the original card goes back to the owner.
All right, so Justin able to get back into this game here. Uses uses a Vraska's Contempt to deal with the Vraska.
A little bit of self-loathing on Vraska's part.
Not very kind of Vraska to do that to herself. And uses a Harness Lightning, which was stolen by Gonti, Lord of Luxury, to deal with the Glint Sleeve Siphoner, taking away Sergio's card advantage engine and his Planeswalker all in one fell swoop. Pretty nice there for Justin.
I think Vraska probably had some childhood memories of her brother making her hit herself. Stop hitting yourself.
So Whirler Virtuoso and an additional Servant of the Conduit coming down here for Sergio. He has 12 energy now, representing quite a few Thopters.
Yeah, I think the combination of the Siphoner and the Vraska really has given Sergio an advantage on the table, because in most cases, Justin actually had to go 2-for-1 himself. Oh, sorry, Sergio got kind of 2-for-1 value for each of those cards.
Absolutely. He had to use the Vraska's Contempt and lose a creature to that Vraska. Scarab God coming down here for Justin Rios. A pretty good card in this matchup, but will it be enough with Sergio's board starting to balloon now?
It's probably one of the cards that can really pull him back. So I think that if it's unanswered, Justin might feel that the tide is turning in his favor.
His life total still a healthy 16 here.
Yeah, a lot of times life totals don't quite matter in the energy matchups until the end, because it's all about building an unbeatable board and then taking advantage of that. You don't want to press an advantage, because it's not really worth throwing away resources to try and just get life points.
Here's Sergio. Looks like he's running low on cards here, and it's dangerous for him, because if he passes the turn without affecting Justin's board, Justin will have the ability to create 2 different zombies.
I saw a really good one.
Mana.
I think Sergio drew a very, very good one.
Yep. Oh, that is a very, 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 very good one.
So he's taking... Oh, this is interesting. Oh, he's got the treasure too. So he actually is taking the Scarab God from Justin. Now, Justin's hope for coming back into this match really just taken hostage.
Yeah, and the game turned around in one fell swoop there. That was crazy. Justin kind of had stabilized.
Oh, yeah.
By the looks of things. It looked like he was going to untap and put himself in the driver's seat, but no longer.
I hope Sergio kind of, said R when he took that Scarab God, because that pirate really, really turned around the game.
Now here's where Vraska's Contempt could have a bit of a disadvantage. If he uses that on the Scarab God, he will not get back his own Scarab God.
That's true.
A rare situation. So what do you think it is that Justin might be able to draw to get himself back into this game at this point?
This is tough. There's not really any sweepers, so the board that Sergio has, he has like 8 creatures on the table. It's going to be hard for any individual card to do that. He's going to probably have to chain together some cards, so probably at least one Rogue Refiner into something like maybe a Hostage Taker of his own. But he only has a Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and Sergio is going to really push his advantage this turn.
Because he only has access to 1 energy right now, Sergio can only create 1 zombie, but One's pretty good.
Yep. Well, the one he chose was a Rogue Refiner, which puts him even further ahead.
And now he actually can make another one if he so chooses.
Yep. Getting 2 energy, which allows his Servant of the Conduits to tap for mana.
Sergio lining up an attack here.
He's basically figuring out what the best blocks Justin can have. Because he knows he doesn't want to give too many more turns to Justin. And so he may actually just be very, very aggressive. He also has a negate in hand, so a lot of the spells that might bring him back into the game can be countered. So he wants to basically win the game in 2 turns.
Thinks better of attacking that Scarab God into a Death Touch creature. Oh! Sends everybody into the red zone here at Justin now.
Yeah, so if Justin blocks the 2 biggest creatures, which is likely probably the Will of Virtuoso and the Scarab God, 9 damage comes through, putting Justin on 3, and Sergio has 3 flyers, 3 1/1 flyers, so it's going to be really, really tough. And that's not even counting the rest of the ground creatures.
He even has the ability to create an additional flyer thanks to the 3 energy he has there. So Justin really with his back against the wall here. Take a miracle for him to get out of this game.
Yeah, I don't think actually Justin has anything in his deck that really is able to allow him to come back from this, but hopefully.
So Glint Sleeve Siphoner there, trading with Servant of the Conduit. Gonti trading with Scarab God. Scarab God comes back for Justin. He's down to 3 now.
Scarab God is actually not going to be good enough, even if you could actually return something like the Will of Virtuoso. He just doesn't. He can make a bunch of blockers, so maybe that's good enough. It's going to be tough. I think Sergio must have figured that out.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a little bit of a misstep for Sergio, because if Justin has a land with that Scarab God, he could now use it to return a Whirler Virtuoso back to the battlefield, I believe.
I'm not sure if he actually has a Will of Virtuoso in his
yard.
Yeah,
oh,
but
okay.
if he did, it would be really, really good for Justin. But
and that's it.
Yep.
Sergio Garcia on 4-color energy, able to secure himself a spot in the top 8 here at Grand Prix Atlanta.
Yeah, it always feels good with 1 round to go, being able to lock your spot in. You can relax for the next round.
All right, we'll be right back here with more coverage of Magic Standard at Grand Prix Atlanta after these messages.